Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Academy of Fine Learning. Today we'll see the features of object-oriented programming. We'll learn regarding the features of object-oriented programming. Each and every object-oriented programming like Java has 6 features. The first one is classes, next the objects, then data abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, and the last is polymorphism. So what's the objective of this video? After watching this video, you will come to know regarding the detailed understanding of object-oriented features, which is available in Java. And obviously, we'll learn these features using real-world example. So in a nutshell, at the very beginning, I would like to just introduce yourself with these basic features of object-oriented programming. Let me just brief it first, then I'll go and explain in detail. So what's the first feature? Each and every object-oriented programming has a concept of class. So what is a class? A class which acts as a blueprint for all the objects. Yes, a class has variables and methods. Methods means functions. And variables means the entity where the data is stored. Yes, we can create as many objects as we need using a class. Then the next feature of an object-oriented programming that it has objects. What is the objects? An object is the foundation of every object-oriented programming language. An object consists of variables and methods which is defined to its class. So we can create objects from a class and that object holds as many variables and methods of that particular class. As you understood, a class is a logical structure based on which the objects, which is a physical structure which holds RAM, that is while execution of a Java program, the memory is occupied by the objects. And these objects actually operate to generate some particular output which is desired by a particular Java program. So this object lies at the core of the Java programming language, like any of the object-oriented programming languages. The third feature of an object-oriented programming language is that it provides abstraction. Abstraction is nothing but a process which will hide unnecessary details. That is, only the relevant data will be displayed to you and the unnecessary details will be hidden from you. That's the abstraction. Then next, the fourth one. The fourth feature of an object-oriented programming is encapsulation. Encapsulation, as the name implies, encapsulation means encapsulating something. The word capsule comes over here. In a capsule, you put different medicines all together, but when you have this capsule, you don't feel the taste of the particular chemical which is inside the capsule because it is encapsulated. So here in Java, it's a process of binding object state, like the fields, the data members, or you can say data variables, and the behavior of the particular class, which is defined by the functions or methods. So a particular encapsulation is the binding of the encapsulation in Java is binding of objects and behavior. There is the fields, data members, and methods together in a single entity. This is called as class. Yes, so a class is an example of encapsulation in a Java program. Next, the next feature, the fifth feature of an object-oriented programming language is inheritance. So as inheritance in real world happens, that a parent inherits this property and gives its property to his son or daughter. So a child gets the inherited property from its parent, correct? This is an example of real world inheritance. So we inherit many things from our parents, even the features, the characters, and the way we talk, sometimes we inherit from our parent. So the same thing happens in an object-oriented programming language like Java. What happens here? One class inherits the properties of another class. It's possible. It's not mandatory, definitely. You no need to inherit the property of another class to your class, but yes, it's possible. You can do it. So this is a feature available over here. Like we have the mobile many features which you may use or may not use. In the same way, in a Java program, we have the feature of inheritance. You may use or you may not use. It's not mandatory to use inheritance everywhere or in each and every program. Inheritance provides the idea of code reusability. That is how a code which has been written already can be reused again. A subprogram, that is a subclass, sorry, not a subprogram, a subclass which inherits another class, it defines the feature which is unique to it, and it inherits the features which is available to the class it inherits. So definitely, in a nutshell, a particular class can inherit the property of another class. That is called inheritance in object-oriented programming language like Java. So a class can be used to provide and create many objects. So even an object can inherit the property of another objects. Yes, so that is the one of the feature of the Java programming language, and is a feature of any of the object-oriented programming language, inheritance. Now we'll go to the next point, polymorphism. The polymorphism is a Greek term. Poly means, in this term, the poly means many and morphism means forms. Morph means forms. So polymorphism basically means many forms. So in the real world, we have many forms. As a teacher, I'm teaching you right now. As a player, I may go to the club in the evening and I can play table tennis, which I like the most. And I can go to the market and become a shopper. I can go to the outdoor and can play cricket. So that time I'll be a cricketer. So I have different forms in my real world. So this is known as the polymorphism in real world. That is, each and every person does different thing in different time, in different circumstance. So that becomes their polymorphism over there. So how this polymorphism concept is defined in Java? So it is a property where an object behaves differently in different situations. The same object will behave differently in different situation as the situation demands. Yes, so the object is taking different forms. So it is calling polymorphism. Now, this is the basics of these features. Now we'll see it in a bit more details. So we'll see the class in details. So we see that we have written a class over here. So in this slide, I have created a class and showing in front of you. It is a class named student. So the class is the keyword which is used to create a class, and the name of the class we have given student. We can give any name over there. Then the curly bracket opens and we are giving one string variable named ID, one integer variable named age, one string variable named course, and one method or function named enroll, which is a void method. It doesn't return anything. And we are printing by this student enrolled by using system.out.println. Then you are closing the curly bracket for the scope of the function or method enroll, and then we are closing the curly bracket to close the scope of the class student. So this is a class which contains three fields: ID, age, and course, and also it contains a behavior using which is implemented using a function or method called enroll. Yes, this is an example of a class. Now we'll see about the object. Now from this particular class student, we have created one object. What's the name of the object? S1. How we have created this? We have created, see, look at my cursor in this particular line. How we have created the object S1? By using this syntax: class name space name of the object equals to new keyword. It's the Java keyword which you have to use for creating an object. Space the class name, open the bracket and close the bracket. Yes, so this is the example of creating a simple object. So S1 is an object we have created over here. Similarly, we can create many objects. Instead of giving S1 name, in the next line you can write down S2, S3, S4, S5. All will be the object of the class student. That is, these objects will hold on the members, data members like ID, age, and course. Understood? And these objects can be permitted to call the methods of the class student, which is enroll. In the last slide you have seen. So all these properties, string ID, integer age, string course, and method enroll, will be having accessed by S1, S2, S3, and whatever the objects of the class student you will create. We can set the values. See this, how we are setting the values at the bottom. See here in this three line, look at my cursor. S1.id. So we are giving the S1 the value of ID in the object S1. Now we are storing the ID 1 to 3. In the S2 we are giving the age is equals to 18. Yes, and in the S3 you are giving the course is equals to computers. So in this way we are assigning the values. Now we'll come to the next property, the next feature of object-oriented programming, that is abstraction. One real-world example of abstraction is that when you go to a bank account online and log in over there, you give your user ID and password and then press login. When you press login, you get the welcome page, or you get the money withdrawn, or we can see your account balance. But in the background, your username, that is user ID and password, is taken by the computer networks through a particular protocol, and then it has been searched, your username and password is matching or not into the data server. After matching only, they provide you your home screen, or whatever the job you wish to do. Each and everything is done after that, correct? So all these entire complex processes are hidden to you. You are just been given the part of the data which is required for you. This is an example of abstraction. This abstraction is achieved in Java using two ways: abstract classes and interfaces. Obviously, these two are big concepts, and you can learn later when you go through with the Java course, and you learn regarding the Java basics topic by topic using the other videos. So what is this abstract class? Let me just brief. I will not go to in detail. An abstract class in Java can be created using the abstract keywords. So it's like abstract space class space the class name. So before the class name, you have to just provide the abstract keyword. Then the class will be an abstract class. So if we make a class abstract, then what will happen? We cannot create any object of the class. Yes, inside the abstract class, what will happen? We can declare the abstract methods only plus concrete methods. So no, sorry, I used by mistake the terms only. We can declare the abstract methods, also the concrete methods, like any other normal methods also we can put, and we can also put the abstract methods. So by using abstract class, we can achieve 0% to 100% abstraction. Are you clear? The interface is in another way of providing abstraction using Java. How interfaces works actually? See, for interface, it can take only abstract methods. Are you clear? There are the general methods, and there are another type of the methods in Java available, that is abstract methods. Abstract methods have just the prototype, and it doesn't have any definition. So these are the things which you learn in the video of interfaces and abstract classes separately. I am not going to go to that detail over here. It is not been understandable to you in this level. So just to try to understand the basics of the feature abstraction and how it is implemented in Java. So one way to implement abstraction in Java is to use abstract classes. Another way to use it by using interface. Interface provides pure abstraction, that is 100% abstraction. Because in interface, one thing is same with the abstract class is that for interface also we cannot create objects. But in case of interface, we don't have the capacity to provide normal methods. Here all the methods defined inside the body of an interface should be abstract methods only. Yes. So these are two ways to define abstraction in Java. Now we'll see regarding encapsulation, the fourth feature. Encapsulation means binding what? The object state and behavior. That is, the field and methods will be binded together in a single entity, which is known as the most popular thing in Java, that is a class. Why I'm telling it's most popular, because in the first program of Java only, you have to see the class. Class and main methods are such a thing that it will be available in each and every Java programs. Otherwise, the Java program won't run. A class and a main method is a mandatory one for each and every Java program. So as in encapsulation, the class wraps both fields and methods, it will be secured from outside access. Yes, so the member, suppose integer a you have defined inside a class, and another method 1 or my method 1 you have defined inside that class. So that cannot be accessed outside of the class without creating the object of the class. So in this way, it provides the encapsulation. It is encapsulating the data and the methods inside a class framework, inside a class. We can restrict the access to the members of a class using access modifiers such as private, protected, and public keywords. In case of public, it will be accessed everywhere. In case of protected, it will be accessed only by the derived class objects. In case of private, it cannot be accessed out of the class scope. So when you create a class in Java, it means that we are implementing encapsulation. As simple as that. So encapsulation helps us to achieve the reusability of code without compromising the security. Now we can see a little example of encapsulation. See, this particular class we have defined. In this particular class, we are providing integer number of employees equals to 0, and we are providing a method. The method is public void method, and the name of the method is set number of employees. It takes one argument, one parameter, integer. That is the value of this integer should be passed as count method, this count variable. So this count is assigned to number of employees, which is set initialized with the value 0. It is private. Okay, this sum of employees integer variable is set as private. It cannot be accessed outside. Now we have public double get number of employees. So if we call this particular method, we can get the number of employees available to this particular employee count class. How we are getting it? It is a double. See, the return value here is the double. It is not void. Unlike the last one, it is not void. It is having the return type double. So it is returning something. Yes, it is returning what? Number of employees. So whatever the number of employees you are setting by using set number of employees method can be seen, can be returned by the double get number of employees method. Now we have defined another class, public class encapsulation example. So by using this particular example, we have starting point here, public static void main, which is the starting point of this Java program. Here we are creating an object. Name of the object is obj. This object is of the class employee count. So for this particular class, we are creating an object within the main function of this particular class, of another class actually. Yes, this obj object is created. After that, we are using this obj object to set number of employees to 5,613 employees are there. So you are setting it by using this object name. Without using this object name, you cannot call this method. We can call this method only by this particular object name, because this object belongs to this particular class. Make it clear to your mind. Then we are printing that system.out.println number of employees. This number of employees will be printed into the output screen. Plus is used for concatenating some value to display into the output screen. Yes, it's not addition, it's concatenation of a string. Then we are typecasting it to integer because it is returning double value, correct? When you are returning here public double get number of employees, we are returning here number of employees which is of the type double, correct? So from double to change it to integer, we have to make explicit typecasting because double is larger than the integer. So to change from double to integer, we are passing this particular value. So we are passing here which value? This value, this double value which is returned by this particular statement, object dot get number of employees. So when you are calling get number of employees method by the object of the class employee count, then what will happen? This particular value which has been set by this particular line 5613 will be returned. That double value, this is the double value is returning, as I told before, that will be converted to integer and it will be printed into the output screen. Yes, even without making it integer, we can display definitely, but it should be after point there will be zero values. So we don't want to display that. So we are making it changes to the integer. Yes. So this is an example of encapsulation. So what is the benefit of encapsulation in Java programming? When you want to change the implementation details of the last class employee count, you can freely do so without affecting the classes that are using it. So if you want to change that, any details over here, it doesn't matter. Whatever the things, suppose you want to change something in employee count, any of the details you want to change over here, then it will not affect anything inside the public class encapsulation example. It will be happening very easily. So that is the benefit of encapsulation, because this number of employees member, data member, integer data member, and these two methods, set number of employees and get number of employees, are defined inside the employee count class. Correct? Na? It is encapsulated within here. So that will not have any effect if you do any changes and if you do any other coding in public class encapsulation example. These two classes are separate and they have their own encapsulation available. Inheritance in details now. We'll see that inheritance feature now in details. What is inheritance? Inheritance is a process of defining a new class based on an existing class by extending its common data members and methods. As I told that inheritance is nothing but to get the property of a class to another class, or from the object of a class to the another object of the another class. So it allows us to reuse of code. One code which you have developed by using by writing one class, that can be simply reused by just inheriting that class. So you'll get this property from that class to your class. So it improves the reusability of your Java application. For example, suppose a class you have written to create a bicycle. So that bicycle you have created and you have written for that 1000 lines of code. Now you want to make a motorcycle. So a motorcycle and bicycle, in your definition, suppose the difference is that in motorcycle you have a motor, and in bicycle it doesn't have. Other than each and everything is same. So on that case, you will just inherit the class bicycle to the class motorcycle, and then you will just write down 10 lines of code to define a motor and fix on that bicycle. Now it becomes the motorcycle. You no need to write down 1000 lines of code which you have written for the bicycle class again. So in this way, it will improve your reusability. Yes, the code reusability you are achieving in this way through inheritance. So here the parent class which is inherited is known as the base class or super class, and the child class which is inheriting the property of the super class or the base class or the parent class is known as derived class or subclass or child class. These terms you have to remind every time and you have to use every time. These things are used interchangeably. Now you can see this, how inheritance happens in Java. So it's very simple. Extend keyword is used for class to class inheritance. As you are not going to much details, just a very simple example I have shown over here. Class A extends class B. So how you are writing this? Class A space extends space name of the class B. That's enough. Inside there, whatever the code you write, that code will be specific to class A, while already having the features of class B. So class B property anyhow you are getting. Suppose the class B is the bicycle, then the bicycle's property you are all getting. Suppose that class A is the motorcycle. So you are just writing here 10 lines of code over here for motorcycle. The bicycle's code you got already in this particular class. It's so much beneficial. Yes. So what are the types of inheritance is there? There are 3 types of inheritance. One is a single inheritance. Another is multi-level inheritance. Another is the hierarchical inheritance. There are actually, we can define inheritance in more ways. So for the simplicity in this time being, when you are learning the Java at the very first stages right now. So in this first stage, earlier stages, we'll just go through with these 3 types of the inheritance. One is this, we will define you, will make you introduce with these 3 simple types of the inheritance. Single inheritance is that a child and parent class have a single relation. That is, a single child inherits a single class. It is a single inheritance. Multi-level inheritance is that there are levels. Suppose class A inherits class B and class B inherits class C. So it's a level is available. Yes. Are you clear, right? A child and a parent class relationship where a class extends the child class is the multi-level. In a hierarchical inheritance where more than one classes extends the same class. For example, class B inherits class A, class C also inherits class A. So class A is being inherited by class B, also by class C. That is called hierarchical inheritance. So all this sort of the inheritance in the form of the class is not available in Java. So Java has another type of inheritance, that is interface to interface inheritance, that we'll learn in the later chapters. Now we'll go through with the last feature of the object-oriented programming, that is polymorphism. Polymorphism means many forms. When a particular object, a particular entity in Java can do 2 different jobs in 2 different ways with the same entity name, is known as the polymorphism. For there we have 2 popular ideas. One is method overloading, another is the method overriding. These 2 ideas, these 2 concepts implements polymorphism in Java. So there are 2 types of polymorphism in Java. One is the method overloading. In case of method overloading, what happens? Which method overloaded, the method which is overloaded have the same name but different signatures. Different signature means the return type may be different, or the number of parameters of the method may be different, or the data type of the parameters may be different. This is called as the method overloading. This is known as the compile time polymorphism. That is, during the compile time, the Java compiler try to understand which particular method you are calling for, and it will determine that particular method. This is called the method overloading. Another type of the polymorphism is method overriding. In case of method overriding, the method signatures, two method signatures are exactly same. But these two methods are defined in two different classes, and these two classes are connected by inheritance. I repeat, there are two methods with the exact same name and signature. The name is same, the signature is same. The return type is same, the number of parameters are same, the data types of the parameters are also same. But the methods are written in different classes, and the classes are usually connected through the inheritance. That is, one class is inherited another class. So the object which will call this particular method depends upon the runtime. So it is known as the runtime polymorphism. When we'll go to the method overloading and method overriding videos, we'll see these things in details. So these are the features of object-oriented programming. In this slide, you can hold and pause in this particular slide for some times and try to recall. The basic points are written over here, and you can just keep on going the entire video again and again to get it 100% clear with it, in case if you have doubt. Thank you very much for this video.